Hello and welcome into the Cali to Cuse Up in the Rafters podcast, your home for college basketball from Cali to Syracuse. We got it covered, everything in between. I'm your host, Anthony Scott, joined alongside me, as always, Andrew Papi and Lucas Silverman. Lucas, how you doing? Haven't spoke to you in a while. Big dub for the Warriors last night and bigger dub in your job search.
I know, finally got it situated. Pretty excited. Starting March 1st, so I might be making up a Cuse trip. Cali might actually be coming to Cuse soon. But yeah, Warriors more importantly. Big win last night in overtime against Miami. I don't know what it is with Miami. They're just having a down year. Absolutely stolen from the Miami Heat. No Draymond last night. Kent Bazemore had 28 off the bench, and that was huge for us to be able to have not a guy over, I believe Andrew Wiggins, our tallest player right now at 6'8", coming away with a win. Steph shot horribly too. So, I mean, stolen, absolutely stolen. And those are the type of wins that we're going to have to come away with.
Yeah, the West is super tight. I'd like to see a nice Kent Bazemore spotting every once in a while. He's good for those 20-point games.
Exactly.
Papi, how you doing? I know you're back in the Cuse for a little bit, but heading back down to Jersey.
Brief time in the Cuse here, yeah, but ready to go for another pod. The Jazz have won 20 of 21. Life's good.
2021, nothing out of the ordinary there. Just Jazz, hottest team, best team in the NBA. Nothing to see here. For the people listening, though, we are recording this on Thursday, February 18th, a little afternoon podcast action. New episodes of Cali to Cuse drop every Friday morning, so you're probably listening to this on Friday. It is recorded on Thursday. And you can find Cali to Cuse on all of our streaming platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere else you get your podcast. We're also on the challenge-sports.com. The Challenge Sports is a new media website with a bunch of podcasts, articles, merchandise covering all sports, not just college basketball. So definitely go check them out. We're just their college basketball podcast. But that's at the challenge-sports.com. Lucas, I know we haven't talked a while in the group message the last few days, because Syracuse, they didn't even get to play yesterday. But let's get into some Syracuse basketball talk.
Exactly. First of all, the challenge, run us our merch. We need some Cuse Cali to Cuse merch finally. We're bringing in the numbers.
March, we may get some merch in March, so be on the lookout for that.
Exactly. It's been a little bit silent on the Cuse end. The last time we saw them play was on Saturday in a win against Boston College, 75-67. They were supposed to play Wednesday at Louisville, which could have been a good stepping stone for them in the right direction in terms of making the tournament. However, postponed due to COVID. I think it was more on the Louisville side instead of the Syracuse side, I'm pretty sure. But nonetheless, how much does Wednesday's postponement from Syracuse's or how much does the Wednesday's postponement hurt Syracuse's chances of getting in the tournament? As we see it right now, they're not really good against quad one teams, but they are 2-1 against quad two teams. Pop, first, that BC win, getting the job done. You gotta see some improvement and got to see some wins. But does this hurt their chances not even being able to play a road game against a quality opponent?
It definitely hurts their chances. These games are dwindling for Syracuse, the amount of quad one opportunities. And unfortunately, the majority of games that they've had canceled this year have come against quad one teams, Louisville twice now, and Florida State as well. So really hurting their chances of potentially landing that, second quality win. I still think Virginia Tech is a nice win to have, regardless of the Q1, Q2, whatever. But all that being said, you got to beat the best teams in front of you. Unfortunately, Syracuse hasn't even really been able to play a lot of the best teams in front of them, but encouraging that they did beat Boston College at home, handled their business. That's one thing that they've been pretty good about this year, other than maybe that Pitt game in the Dome.
Yeah, they've definitely beaten the teams that they're supposed to beat, but at some point you got to make that jump, beat a quad one team, get some more quad two wins. You kind of hit all the points there, Papi. They haven't had many chances. All these games against top opponents have been getting canceled. Syracuse only has 7 games against quad one or quad two teams. Everyone else in the ACC has at least 10 of those games. So we've only had 7 opportunities to get a quad one or quad two win. Syracuse has 2 of those wins, or is it 1 or 2 of those wins? I think we got 1 quad two win and no quad one wins. So yeah, either of those wins would be good. We're 2-1 against quad two, 0-4 against quad one. So either a quad one or a quad two wins helps at this point. And good news for Syracuse is the rest of their schedule, even though it's only 4 games, every single game is either a quad one win opportunity or a quad two win opportunity. So basically at this point, Syracuse probably just has to win 3 of their last 4 games, and they're in no matter what. If you win 2 of those last 4 games, I think it gets a little sketchy. And if you only win 1, I don't see us getting in.
I feel like there is a little bit of silver lining, though, for a team like Syracuse that only plays like 5 players, 40 minutes a game, that this little time off with the postponement allows them to get some rest, to at least get the feet under them a little bit. Any silver linings in the sense of any positives that can come out of postponement? I guess you would go with that. Pop, anything stick out to you against BC, that some momentum stuff that they can at least, take moving forward?
I think Joe Girard's first half certainly was positive. He scored 16 points in the half. Unfortunately, did a little bit of a disappearing act in the second half, but, that's got to give him confidence. That's a performance he can hopefully build off down the future and be able to knock down some shots and help out this team a little bit more. In terms of BC, really I think they just kind of took care of business. BC had 7 scholarship players. They fired their coach after the game. BC sucks. They're pretty much irrelevant in the ACC and have been for a while now. Looking ahead towards Notre Dame, that's a huge game against a team that's been playing a lot better too. So that'll be interesting, Anthony.
Yeah, these next 2 games, you got Notre Dame at home on Saturday. We've talked about in this podcast how good Syracuse has been at home this year. They need to keep that trend going against Notre Dame. I think Syracuse only has 1 loss at home all year. So hopefully that trend can keep going. And then at Duke, that game's on Monday. I feel like that is just a bubble game for both teams. I think both those teams, it's kind of a winner and you're in, you lose and you're running out of opportunities. So I would circle the calendar for Monday against Duke. That's 7 o'clock tip. Going to be a good one at Duke. Syracuse, though, it's just win against any of these opponents and you're looking good.
A.Scott, was the BC loss to Syracuse, was that the nail in the coffin for the coach? Or like, losing to Syracuse was the one, we got to get rid of him now.
I guess, what does that say about Syracuse this year? I guess, are we that bad of a team where if you lose to us, you got to just fire your coach now? Are we falling down that heavily?
Not many schools can say that they fired a coach after beating them. So that's a resume builder, in my opinion. Come on, that's got to mean something at the end of the day. But like both of you mentioned, big game at the Dome against Notre Dame, number 65 in net rankings, quad 2 opportunity with the win. And then obviously Monday at Duke, that's 61st in net rating, which could be a quad 1 win. What is the ranking? Is it 1 to 60? Is a 1 to 65?
Yeah, if it's a road game, it's 1 to 75 is a quad 1. If it's a home game, it's 1 to 30. So they put a lot of weight on those road games, it seems like, which is pretty bad for Syracuse because we don't win many games on the road.
Yeah, the Virginia Tech win would be a quad 1 if that weren't the case, I'm sure.
Right, yeah. And actually, Virginia Tech's only 5 spots away from being in the top 30, so we could get a quad 1 win that way. Also, I checked UB, Buffalo. We beat them earlier in the season. They could be a quad 2 win if they get into the top 75. Right now, they're like 84th. So Syracuse also could be rooting for these other teams to help boost their resume. Honestly, even if Bryant, if they can win some games too, they're hovering around that top 80 range. So we're rooting for other teams as well as rooting for Syracuse.
I just feel like they just invent new systems of evaluating teams, like net rating. Like, what are we talking about here? I mean, it blows my mind how they do that. But again, a win at home. They've been a very good home team against Georgia Tech. What are the keys to the victories, in your opinion, against a quality team like Georgia Tech, who's up and down a little bit, has made a little bit of noise? A.Scott, what are the keys to winning this game at home for the Cuse?
I mean, which one? The Notre Dame?
The one that's coming up. Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, Notre Dame. I meant
Georgia Tech threw me off there, but yeah, the Notre Dame.
I threw myself off. My bad. Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish. Come on, give it to me.
Notre Dame has been playing better. This is a team that looked like they weren't even going to come close to being competitive in the ACC when the season first got going. They put together some nice games recently. Cuse, it comes down to the guard play. It comes down to the three-point shooting. I think Syracuse, it's kind of this year, it really just comes down to the three-point shooting. We rely so heavily on it. And if we're not going to make a change of Kadari playing 30 minutes a game, which I don't see happening, and it comes down to the three-point shooting, rebounding is going to be key once again. And honestly, I just want to see more Kadari Richmond. I know Joe Girard had a good game against Boston College, but that's Boston College. I just don't see him performing against these good teams as well as he's done against lesser opponents.
So I feel like you're either going to have a son and name him Kadari Smith or Sidibe Scott. Excuse me, Kadari Scott or Sidibe Scott. I feel like you're just such a big fan of them. Pop, kind of talk a little bit about this game against Notre Dame, but also I want to hear your thoughts on this matchup against Duke coming up. Without Jalen Johnson, I feel like he would have been a zone killer but now he foregone his season, and now he will be entering the NBA draft. Touch a little bit on those two games. What are the keys to success, and how big is that Jalen Johnson loss big for them?
Yeah, so starting with Notre Dame, I guess the game coming up first, you're looking at a team in Notre Dame who, like Anthony mentioned, started off pretty slow. They have a lot of three-point shooters, Dane Goodwin, Nate Laszewski, who's arguably the most improved player in the conference this year, averaging 15 a game, a huge jump from like 4 points per game last year and shooting around 62% from the field. So really guard defense and wing defense is going to be huge for Syracuse. They're going to have to get out on the three-point line and contest three-point shooters. They're going to have to knock down some threes, conversely, on offense as well if they want to hang with the Irish probably. And, Notre Dame's got a big 7'1" big man, going to have to rebound. Prentice Hubb in their last 5 games, Notre Dame's point guard, has been distributing the ball extremely well with 9 assists, 10 assists twice, 8 assists, and 5 assists. So look to try and shut him down a little bit. Don't allow him to get drive in and get kickouts to open looks on the outside for their shooters. Looking ahead to Duke, though, Duke was playing terrible, and then they kind of found things on the defensive end, starting with that NC State game 2 games ago, held them to a low total. NC State, a decent offensive team, and then also they beat a pretty bad Wake Forest team, but also their defense showed up in that game, held Wake to a low number. So Syracuse going to have to score in that one. Obviously, losing Jalen Johnson is huge. That pretty much goes without saying when you're losing a top 10 guy projected in the NBA draft next year. It's a game they probably should win on the road, but they just haven't been good on the road. So it's a total toss-up.
I'm going to say this is the week Syracuse goes 2-0, though. This is the week.
They need it. One of these weeks.
It wouldn't be Cuse if it wasn't optimistic thinking. Always trying to go 2-0 on a week is always important. I would argue, say, essential to some of the success that they need to make the tournament. I think they're still on the outside looking in on the tournament. Joe Lunardi just has a vendetta out for Jim Boeheim in Syracuse. I don't think even if they win the ACC tournament, he would put him in, be like, no, not a team that could make it. But that's neither here nor there. Any final thoughts on the Cuse before we move ahead to our lovely top 25?
One thing I do want to say, not really about Cuse, but against other teams in the ACC, is just Louisville. They don't have a quad 1 win either, and they're like locked in the tournament. It's because they have so many other quad 2 wins. Syracuse, unfortunately, has had a lot of those easier, opportunities to get quad 2 wins canceled and quad 1 wins. Syracuse schedule, low-key, kind of starting to look more like a mid-major schedule with all these big games getting postponed. We don't play anybody in the non-conference. And then the conference comes, you expect it to be a dogfight. ACC's down this year. That's why we only have 7 games against quad 1 or quad 2 wins. It's a shame that we didn't schedule harder, I guess. It's a shame the ACC's down, I guess. COVID's been throwing a wrench, but no one to blame but yourself when you can't win games. You got to win. That's what it comes down to. And these next 4 games, great opportunities to bolster the resume.
You make a great point. I just saw that North Carolina was playing Northeastern, and I also saw them post a tweet being like, is anybody available to play during this bracket of time in order for us to get our games in and at least, make some sort of noise, even if it's like a Northeastern. They're a powerhouse in their own conference. And so, as bad as they may be and as favored as UNC is against a team like that, those are important. But moving ahead to our top 25 update, let's get right into it. The first thing that sticks out to me is in the top 5, we obviously got Gonzaga and Baylor, but now there are 3 Big Ten teams in the top 5 at Michigan at number 3, Ohio State at number 4, and now a team that we have talked relentlessly about on the ups and downs. I believe they were even unranked at one point in the season. Now at number 5 is the Fighting Illini from Illinois, one of the teams that we thought was the most talented in the Big Ten, just in terms of what they brought to the table. Is Big Ten the powerhouse of the college basketball right now? 3 teams in the top 5 is pretty impressive. Pop, out of those 3, are you surprised that they're in the top 5?
Yeah, definitely. I think the Big Ten is probably the best conference in college basketball. I don't know. I really like the Big 12. The depth of the Big Ten definitely benefits them, especially teams like Illinois, who's been able to play a lot of their games. You look at a team like Michigan. I think they're a very good team, and I think they probably are deserving of top 5 ranking, but it's just interesting to see them up there with, only playing 15 games at 14-1. Couple surprises in that top 10. We got Missouri moving all the way down to 20 after a terrible week. I know we're going to talk about them coming up. But yeah, the top 10, it's been fluctuating all year, and it continues to do that.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Sorry, Scott. I thought you were gonna jump in there, but your thoughts as well. I mean, 3 Big Ten teams in the top 5: Illinois, Ohio State, Michigan. Obviously, Villanova drops 5 spots out of it. But are those 3 teams? Are those the 3 best teams in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I think they are the 3 best teams in the Big Ten. We talked about Iowa's defense last time on the pod and how they've been kind of slipping on the defensive end and also hurting their overall game. And Ohio State, Michigan, I think they've solidified themselves. Illinois has been on a run recently. And you said, Lucas, a few weeks ago that they are the most talented team. And I kind of agree with you. Dosunmu, Cockburn, they have a bunch of guys that are going to be playing in the NBA. And Illinois, do they deserve to be a top 5 team? Maybe not. I always think there's a little too much bias on the Big Ten. I saw today that one analyst had 11 teams from the Big Ten getting in, which means you have either a Michigan State or a Penn State on the bubble. They don't belong to be there. Maryland and Minnesota are kind of your edge teams of getting in to the tournament from the Big Ten. And with the Big 12, if you want to compare the 2 conferences, I think they have better teams up top, and it's not as deep, which makes it easier for those top teams in the Big 12 to stand out because they get to beat up on Iowa State 2 times a year. In the Big 10, there's no real easy games. So I have a bunch of teams bunched up. It's hard to make sense of it all. And I'm interested to see how many teams do get in from the Big Ten. I think it will be 10 teams. I think 10 are going to get in from the Big Ten.
Wait, you're saying there's more than 10 teams in the Big Ten? I thought that was why it was called Big Ten.
Hard to fathom. Yeah, there's 14 teams in the Big Ten. They might not look into changing the name. I'm not sure.
That's just for the listeners to actually think that we're stupid. Okay, so moving down the line, like we mentioned, Villanova drops out of the top 10, or drops out of the top 5, all the way to 10. Are they just pacing till the dance, you think? I mean, Pop, you've been a big Nova fan. They had a couple bad losses, but they're still the heavy favorites. Got to be in the Big East, right?
Heavy favorites in the Big East for sure. I think maybe a little complacency. I think the Big East is really down this year. That loss to St. John's is pretty inexcusable, but the game they lose a couple nights ago to Creighton, I think that one you can kind of stomach a little easier, just given the fact that the Blue Jays are also a ranked team. Villanova was on the road playing against them. And quite frankly, Creighton just shot the lights out. They had a great game offensively, and there really wasn't a whole lot Villanova could do about it. That being said, Villanova's defense isn't as good as it has been in the past, but I still think their offense and their playmakers are pretty solid. And they're going to be a team they're hanging around until the Elite Eight, I think, personally. Definitely the Sweet 16.
A.Scott, I mean, top 10 is still really impressive. I mean, Villanova, we know the pedigree. Jay Wright has built a hell of a program over there. But you don't want to start getting to those 4 seeds, 5 seeds, because that's when you have to play like a number 1 seed, like a Gonzaga, a Baylor, for example. So how important is it for Nova to get back on the right side of things?
Yeah, Papi, you mentioned the Big East was down, so I'm interested to see how heavily favored they give Villanova, how much they weigh Villanova this year, because, they have a couple losses now in the Big East when they usually run through that schedule, even on tougher years. Villanova does need to get in that top 2 seeds because I think they are a weaker team out of those top 8 teams, top 10 teams, just because they do play in the Big East. I haven't seen them against bigger competition. The St. John's loss is really questionable. But other than that, Villanova is still a quality opponent. But seeding is huge, especially this year, because I think in college basketball as a whole, the number 1 seeds and maybe the number 2 seeds are separating themselves a lot from the rest of the pack. So getting those 1 or 2 seeds is big, and avoiding you having to play those 1 or 2 seeds for as long as possible is huge.
That's a good point, because assuming that Villanova wins their conference tournament, and obviously the Big Ten, there's only 1 champion. So even if Illinois, Michigan, Ohio State, 2 of those 3 teams make it, 1 of them loses, that the resume for a Big East conference tournament and conference winner should oversee maybe a runner-up in the Big Ten. But Pop, you mentioned Creighton. They had the biggest jump up in the rankings, moving up 5 spots to number 14. Very impressive. Biggest drop in the rankings, though, is the Missouri Tigers, the lovely SEC, coming back to us, dropping 10 spots, dropping from number 10 to number 20. Pop, you're a big fan of Mizzou. Are they a little fraudulent?
Yeah, in the past I've talked about Missouri, and I I don't think there's a lot of good teams in the SEC, to be honest with you. I think this is one of the weaker conferences I've ever seen in college basketball, legitimately. Like, I don't think there's any good teams. I think Alabama is good when they're hitting their threes, and that's about it. Missouri had a really, really bad loss the other day at home against Arkansas, who moved into the top 25. But, Missouri was beating them by about 20 points in the first half, and they just let Arkansas completely come back in the game. Missouri's now lost 3 in a row after getting destroyed on the road against Ole Miss, who plays very well at home, actually. But then last night, they lost by 10 to a bad, bad Georgia team. Mizzou, definitely frauds. I think Tennessee, I don't like them. I've stayed away from them all year. Really, to me, it's Alabama, and then after that, I have no idea what to make of this conference.
Don't sleep on LSU. That's one team I'll throw in there from the SEC that I do kind of like. They have really good guard play, so that's kind of one reason why I like them a lot heading into the tournament. But yeah, the SEC as a whole is questionable, and it really makes me question the net ranking system because in the ACC, there's 2 teams in the ACC in the top 30 of net ranking. That would be Florida State and Virginia. In the SEC, there's 5 teams in the top 30. LSU, Florida, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Bama. Florida does not need to be in the top 30. Arkansas, I don't know if they and LSU. I like LSU, but I don't think their resume screams top 30 in the net ranking.
I kind of love the way LSU plays. I've seen them a couple of times. They just love to push the pace. They just love attacking the rim. That's partly because of their great guard play. I watched them against Alabama when they got smoked, but they shot lights out from 3. So they were going to beat anybody in the country that day. But yeah, LSU I think is a good team that can make some noise if they get the opportunity. You mentioned Arkansas. So 3 teams enter the top 25 this week. You got Kansas, always coming back to haunt us a little bit, the blue blood. Arkansas, another SEC team that got a big win against Missouri. And then San Diego State, a nice Mountain West team enters the top 25. And then obviously dropping out. If there's 3 in, there's 3 out. Oklahoma State with Cade Cunningham drops out. Purdue, a Big Ten team, and another Big Ten team. And our lovely favorites, our Sluckers, are all drop out. Your thoughts on those 3 teams dropping in or dropping out? Anything stand out to you two?
Sluckers is pretty, sluts dropping out of school, drop out of the top 25, same thing.
Valid. Very valid.
Same thing, yes. Same difference. Kansas moving in, I'm going to stick by it. I think they're fraudulent. They beat Iowa State twice and Kansas State. They did beat Oklahoma State recently. They're on a 4-game win streak, but that was a week ago before they moved into the top 25. They had already come out with new rankings after that win. So then they get rewarded for beating Iowa State and Kansas State, which are gimme games.
Mm-hmm. We will get into San Diego State later. I will mention them in the bubble talk, but I do like them moving into the top 25.
It's always important. I mean, it's crazy how much fluctuation there is. Kansas has been teetering on in and out, and now they're back in. Same with Oklahoma State. I feel like they're always on the edge of things, but
season ban this year for them, so they can be on the edge. But
no postseason ban, Pop. I read today that the NCAA is looking into those allegations, but they're not expected to rule on them before March Madness, so they would be allowed to play.
Is that just them wanting Cade Cunningham an attorney?
Yeah, 100%. Like a lot of times when you're getting investigated, you'll self-impose a ban so the NCAA goes easier on you. And Oklahoma State is saying, well, we have the number 1 recruit in the country. We kind of got to go for it and just hope that they don't rule on this until after the March Madness. So Oklahoma State looks like they may get into the tournament.
I would love to see that, honestly. Talent always prevails. Some darlings that we always love to see. You got West Virginia moving up. You got Iowa moving up again. And then, the top 10 has one ACC team in Virginia, but that won't be lasting long, A.Scott.
No, yeah. Virginia, they should be falling out of the top 10. First topic of Cali to Cuse here after the top 25 is going to be the ACC and a statement game that occurred on Monday night. Florida State versus Virginia, kind of the 2 best teams in the ACC, or at least a lot of people thought going into that game. And Florida State absolutely demolished Virginia, 81-60. Yeah, the Seminoles had the advantage of being the home team in that one, but a 21-point victory is not what I was expecting by any means. Florida State, very hot shooting night, over 50% from 3. 10 guys scored a basket for Florida State, very deep team. Papi, I watched this game with you. Florida State, did they surprise you? Because they definitely surprised me a little bit.
Florida State surprised me. Virginia, I'm kind of coming to the realization, as much as I love Tony Bennett and I like his system and I like some of his players in it, they just don't have the guys. And a lot of years, quite frankly, it seems like they don't have the guys in general. You know, they won the NCAA tournament a couple years ago, but before then, his teams were hanging out in the top 10 a lot and really were experiencing little to no success in the postseason. And, you know, you kind of watch their games and you're like, all right, well, they're great defensively. You know, they move their feet and stuff like that. But when it comes down to it, if a team's getting hot against them from behind the arc or even inside of the arc, they don't have the firepower to stay in the game with them. And then, of course, their best player, Sam Hauser, goes out with 2 fouls. So, you know, I guess you can say everything went wrong for them in that game against Florida State. But I could really see a lot of that stuff happening in the NCAA tournament against good teams too. You know, Sam Hauser, their best player, is really playing, you know, a power forward on defense, and he's small. He can't really do that. So if you got a good power forward on the other team, they're going to give him the ball, clear it out, and try and get him in foul trouble. And if that happens, I don't think Virginia has the offensive firepower to hang in a lot of these games. It's a great defensive system and scheme. But I'll just say one thing. I just think he's got to try and get some better athletes and, you know, some better players in there. Like, I really do like their system, their team, his philosophies. I think he's a great coach, but it only takes you so far. Of course, I'm saying this while they're still the defending national champions, but a lot of those guys are not on this team anymore. Kyle Guy, Ty Jerome, you know, they all headed off to the NBA. DeAndre Hunter is like the one exception to having an athlete who can score, defend, do everything that he's had there.
I was just about to say, yeah, the one thing that's missing from this team is that athletic guy that can just go out there and get buckets. Sam Hauser's more of a shooter, kind of relies on other guys to get him open. Lucas, was this Monday night game a bigger win for Florida State or a bigger letdown for Virginia?
As soon as you texted the group chat being like, how is Virginia not a lock? I'm like, Scotty Barnes is going to be in your nightmares. I mean, let's look at it here. Height usually dominates. And so when you have the point guard, Kihei Clark, at 5'9", versus a 6'9", Scotty Barnes that can handle off the dribble and also shoot and rise up, you're going to have some issues. One of the things that UVA has been always great at is their guard play. You go back to the Brogdon years, the Joe Harris years, then you got Kyle and Ty Jerome, like you mentioned, and then you bring in like an athletic wing like a top 5 pick, like a DeAndre Hunter. But right now, they just don't have that one it guy. And Kihei Clark, as great as he is, and, you know, he locks up, he does all these great things, he's just not big enough. He's just not big enough. You need size. You need athleticism. Scotty Barnes is a nightmare for UVA, great defensive team. And, you know, they're going to run into some problems against some more talented teams. We saw them against Gonzaga get run off the court. And now, you know, Florida State now kind of has some momentum leading up to that. And I wouldn't be surprised if I saw a similar result if they met up again in the ACC tournament.
Yeah, I think Florida State is a better team. I think we really saw that on Monday night. I know they had the upper hand being at home. Florida State's they haven't lost a conference game at home since 2019, Florida State. So they had all the good things going for them, and they proved why, winning by 21. But I think it does show a lot just how much farther ahead Florida State is on the offensive end. Putting up 81 points against this Virginia defense. I don't care how bad Virginia's defense is. I mean, you score 81 against them. That's incredible. Yeah, they shot 50% from three. Seems like everybody was on. But even if you don't shoot 50%, you're still going to put up 70 with these kind of numbers. They only had 5 turnovers all night. So they did a great job hanging on to the ball. Very experienced Florida State squad. A lot of guys that can get it done. Scary team. For Virginia, yeah, I don't see them making a run like you guys said. I actually see them maybe losing in the first round again. I think they could be susceptible to that upside just because they don't have that offensive firepower.
I mean, to be fair, they are the reigning national championships, but we forget 2 tournaments ago they lost to the 16th seed. So, I mean, like, we can say they're the reigning national champs, but they're also 2 years removed from being the most upsetted team in NCAA tournament history. So there's a little bit of a give and take with that. Like you mentioned, Pop, Tony Bennett has gotten the job done, has, you know, good pedigree, and he's making himself a name for himself in the ACC. But, you know, thank God he won that national championship, or else we would be having a whole other conversation about Tony Bennett.
No, I think Tony Bennett's secure over there in Virginia. But, yeah, I mean, the national championship does help a lot.
Well, what I find interesting, too, about this Virginia team, though, is they really started off the year very good on offense. If you look at it, you know, they were scoring a lot of points in some of these games. Sure, they had the slip up against San Francisco, but in the beginning of ACC play, at least, They put up 80 against Notre Dame, 85 against Clemson, 81 against Cuse, 73 against Pitt. I mean, that's better offensive numbers than a lot of his teams have ever put up. And all of a sudden, they're kind of rearing their head back to their old ways a little bit and can't find a way to put the ball in the hole. Trey Murphy is probably that guy that they want to be DeAndre Hunter. He's a transfer from Rice. I mean, I just don't think he's quite as talented as DeAndre Hunter, but he has had a nice year. It's just, they got to find guys that can step up and score offensively. If Kihei Clark is having an off night offensively and not distributing the ball well, then I think it spells a lot of problems.
Before we move on to the bubble talk, outside of Virginia and Florida State, is there anyone else in the ACC you could see challenging for a Final Four spot? I think we're even out on Virginia, so I guess Florida State right now is the only team that we consider a real threat. Anyone else stick out to you in this conference?
I mean, I just always love picking one freshman that's just going to lead the team, and that's Scotty Barnes for me. I really think it is just Florida State. Leonard Hamilton, underrated coach. He's never had the best talent around him, but he also develops amazing talent. He's had, like, Dwayne Bacon come through. He's had Chris Middleton come through. So he's been able to develop some really good talent out of his system. And, UVA is going to be there. I think they still can figure it out and get things going. But yeah, I think it's just really those two, and then it's a very, low bar after that.
Mm-hmm. In terms of a Final Four run, I don't really see it from anybody else in the ACC. One team I'll throw out there that, I really like their guard plays specifically is Georgia Tech. They're going to have to get into the NCAA tournament, but a really experienced guard in Jose Alvarado, Michael DeVoe as well. They can shoot the three. They have a good big man in Moses Wright. So I think if they were to get in, they could make a little bit of a run. Maybe not to the Final Four, but Sweet 16, Elite 8, something like that.
Georgia Tech, one of the few teams that had actually beaten Florida State this year. So they got that going. Twice. They beat them twice. Wow. Yeah. They definitely have that going for them. I do like that Georgia Tech pick there, just like the opposite of Virginia. Very explosive on offense, but sometimes struggle on the defensive end. But defense does win championships. So we'll have to see who actually makes that run come March. Let's swing over to some teams that might not even be dancing in March. Let's talk about the bubble. And I'll cut it off there. We got 2 minutes left.
Guys, I'm on an absolute heater on FanDuel.
I know. You're fucking chopping.
Dude, I was so close to making some big money 2 nights ago. Like
the 100, the one you finished in 100th?
Out of 20K.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It was insane.
It's stupid that you don't win more for that.
I don't know. But yeah, like that lineup's gonna be an infamy. But yeah, no, it was nuts. Like I couldn't believe what happened. I'm also trying to make a lineup for – I've won money 5 straight nights. 5.
Nice fucking run.
Yesterday was my worst day, though. I put like $5 in and only won 2. Well, take it, but not great.
You lost 3 or did you win 7 total?
I lost 3. Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
Did Patrick Williams go to Florida State too?
Yeah. Forgot about him. Yeah. Chris Middleton's always the one that I'm like, wait, he went to Florida State?
Yeah, like, dude, that's the thing. Like the guys that come out of there, they're not known for being big college guys, I feel like. I love
Scotty Barnes back when he was playing at McEachern with Vernon Carey. And then he went to Montverde.
He's another guy, though. Like, he's going to get drafted in the top 10, averaging, 8 points a game? I understand he's talented, but, nobody, just puts up numbers at Florida
He's
State.
Coming off the bench, too. It just doesn't make sense. Why does it matter?
I want to see him go off in the tourney. 35 minutes a game. Literally let him just take over.
Yeah.
Facts.
Moving over to the bubble, where we have some interesting teams on the bubble this year. A good mix of mid-majors and Power 5 teams. The last 4 in right now features 3 mid-majors in St. Bonaventure, Boise State, Colorado State, and then the Power 5 on the edge there is Stanford. Then the first 4 out, next 4 out. This is all according to Joe Lenardi of ESPN. A bunch of Power 5s are on the outside looking in, like Maryland, UConn, Syracuse, St. John's, Ole Miss, and a couple more mid-majors with Richmond, SMU, and St. Louis. Bunch of Atlantic 10 teams, bunch of Mountain West teams. It's going to be tough to see who gets in. It's going to be interesting to see how they rate these teams. What is the separating factor? Because you have teams like St. Bonaventure that are 10-3. Then you have Maryland who's 13-10. So on paper, it looks like St. Bonaventure is the better team, but they really haven't played anybody. So I'm going to ask you guys, if you guys were on the committee, if you were one of the people making the bracket this year, Lucas, we'll start with you. how would you maybe rank these teams? Like, what are you maybe looking for to put one of these teams in versus keeping one out?
Well, if I had my choice, I mean, Cal would be in every year no matter what. But I don't have that luxury of just waving my wand like that. I truly believe it comes down to wins and losses. Like, I think you win and you're in, and I don't really care that much about the quality of win. Being able to just win is important enough, and that's why you see a lot of these mid-major teams getting rise. I mean, the postponement has elevated all of these mid-major teams like the St. Bonaventures of the world, like the St. Louis's of the world, Colorado State, Boise State. I know we're the experts, but we can't pick and choose and decipher who's better than who because, A team like you mentioned, St. Bonaventure, has only played 2 non-conference games, and now they're cooking in the A10, but that doesn't do any justice to what they're doing. Versus a Maryland who plays in the best conference, arguably, 13-10. The fact that they even have 7 wins is incredible for a Maryland team that's had a lot of turnover and has a lot of talent that's been in and out. So it's hard to say. I think that this year, as weird as a year as it is, you're going to see a lot of mid-major teams in there just because they've been able to just win the games that they're supposed to win. And the net rating doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's like the Big 10 teams, the Big 12 teams are getting boosted. They just have so many opportunities to get the quad 1 win. As long as they get one, it seems like that they get moved up into the bubble no matter what else they've done. Papi, how are you looking at this mess right here we have on the bubble?
Yeah, and it is a mess. I really truly believe that. I don't think that there is one proper way to, kind of rank these teams with the COVID issues. And it's unfortunate because of that, because I think things are a little different. And, the net rating is replacing the RPI a couple years ago, which everybody used to talk about. But really the net rating is probably like having issues due to COVID as well. Like you're not getting a true sense of this team's ranking because of their COVID problems. Like I look at a team like Colorado State, who's 14-4. They're 44th in the net ranking, and they've beaten the 3 best teams in their conference, or the 2 best teams in their conference. They've beaten Boise State, Utah State, and I just don't understand why they're getting in. When those are their only good wins. I mean, Boise State is a good win. They also beat San Diego State on the road. They were able to make up those games because I believe they're in separate conferences. But, they lost at St. Mary's 53-33. They scored 33 points in a game. So, frankly, I don't want to see them in the NCAA tournament. I look at something as simple as that if I'm on the committee, and I'm like, I don't know, man, you scored 33 points in one game. I know it sounds ridiculous, but in an age of COVID like this, what's the best way to, really look at these teams? It's tough. It's going to be difficult. I really don't have the answer for you, unfortunately. Yeah. People are getting paid to figure this out, and that's not me, sadly. But, I don't like Colorado State. A team like St. Louis, who's 11-3 in 31st in the net, but hasn't played a ton of games because of COVID. It just doesn't make sense. Hasn't played quality opponents. How do you judge these teams? I guess if you win, the best way to do it is if you win, you're in, right?
Yeah, that it's a mess. I wish I was always on the committee to make these brackets, but this year I'm kind of happy I'm not on the committee because it is an all-out mess. COVID has just made this a bigger issue than it ever has before because of the non-conference and some teams not being able to schedule, getting off to late starts. And, yeah, mid-majors, my message to the mid-majors is go out and prove me something, show me something in the non-conference. I know this year was a little bit harder because of COVID, so it's like, do you knock the teams for not playing in the non-conference because it was hard to get the season underway? In normal years, I would say St. Bonaventure, Colorado State, yeah, you're out because you didn't play anybody really in the non-conference. But this year, maybe there's some leeway given to that. One correction, Papi, is Colorado State and San Diego State. They are in the same conference. And speaking of that Mountain West, I think San Diego State's the only team that deserves to get in. Right now you have Boise State, Colorado State, Utah State, and San Diego State all in the bubble. But if you look at all the non-conference schedules, San Diego State's the only team that went out and played somebody and beat somebody, and that was at UCLA in the first game of the season. And then they all look even playing each other, winning a game at home, losing on the road. So you just got to look at the non-conference. I guess San Diego State would get my one not automatic bid, the at-large bid. and then everybody else has to fight to get the automatic bid by winning the conference tournament. That being said, Syracuse here on the bubble, I know we know a lot about the Orange. How do you think they stack up against these other teams, Papi? Do you like to see Syracuse in, knowing their resume compared to these other schools?
I mean, Syracuse, in my opinion, so I'm looking at a team who this is all according to Joe Lunardi. SMU is ranked behind them in the next 4 out. So I guess you can make the argument that they're behind them, but I don't even know why SMU is in the next 4 out. I don't even know why they're in the same breath as the NCAA tournament this year. They're sitting at 11-4, 59th in the net rating. And if you guys can find me one quality win on their resume, then please let me know, because I know Memphis sucks this year. And I know that their win at Dayton is like average at best. And other than that, I don't see any reason why we're even mentioning SMU. I mean, I guess you can say they're a COVID casualty because they haven't played a lot of games and maybe they have more talent. But it's just like, why, how can you put them in then? I like San Diego State and out of that conference. I saw them beat Arizona State on the road, who I know Arizona State hasn't played well. But like you said, Anthony, they're at least trying to play quality opponents in the non-conference, trying to get into the NCAA tournament. I think they deserve to be rewarded for that.
And you want to know what pisses me off the most? I mean, COVID, whatever, except for like a couple of outliers where there's real upsets, these teams were going to get smoked by these great teams that they would be paid money to lose to. I mean, for example, like I know UNC, I bring up it again, they're playing Northeastern, a random team. Northeastern's like, yeah, give us whatever amount of money you want. We'll lose by 40 or whatever the result ends up being. But let's think about it. Like the teams that play these Power 5 schools, except for like 2 or 3 outliers at best, maybe reach it up to 5, just give them a little bit more credit. Most of them don't turn out well. So now are we comparing their losses to other losses? I mean, it's not like you can't make the argument being like, oh, COVID messed everything up, we couldn't play these great teams, when in reality, you guys were going to get smoked by those teams, which would hurt your resume a little bit more by just saying you played them. No, there's one thing to just play them. There's another thing to actually be good enough to beat them. And yeah, we can't answer those questions because they were postponed, but I have pretty good instinct that they were going to get smoked, a lot of these teams that would have been playing these Power 5 schools.
I guess one good thing left is that it is so close on the bubble, so hard to decipher. Yeah, there's only 4 games left in the conference tournaments for a lot of these teams, but all you need to do is win, and you seem like you'd be able to separate yourself from the rest of the competition because it is so close. So I think as long as these teams focus on what is in front of them, if they can handle business, I doubt everybody else will be winning. I know Boise State and San Diego State, just going back to the Mountain West, they play a series. They're the last 2 games of the regular season. So that could just determine it right there, who gets the at-large from that conference. St. John's, another thing to mention. St. John's is an interesting case because they started out the year so bad. They were in the Big East. I think they started out like 0-4 in the Big East or something like that, and now they've won 7 of 8. So, does the NCAA really factor in how they are playing down the stretch? We know that they've done that in the past. So I think these last 4 or 5 games in the conference tournaments should hopefully separate this for us. But right now it is a mess, and I think the committee is going to give the upper hand to the Power 5 conferences because that's what they want to see in there. And a lot of the mid-major teams didn't go out and try and win non-conference games this year.
Yeah. St. John's is a really interesting team looking at their resume. They have the win over Villanova. They have, I guess, a quality win over Boston College in the non-conference if you want to go by playing a Power 5 team or whatever. But at the same time, yeah, they have bad losses in their conference, though. Like, you say they've won 7 of 8, which is true, but they lost to Butler in that stretch, which is one of the easier games in that stretch. They've also lost to Marquette. They lost to Georgetown earlier in the conference, and Georgetown's been playing better recently. But in the beginning of the year, Georgetown was awful. So I don't know. It's
they lost to BYU in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, they had an opportunity to get a good win against BYU, and they didn't do it. I don't know. I mean, they have the Nova win, but other than that, they beat UConn without James Bouknight, who's now back for the Huskies. So that win's still going to look pretty good on their resume, but it really shouldn't deep down. I don't know why this team is really hanging around that threshold. If you just have to look at things holistically rather than like looking at one net ranking or something like that.
Yeah. I hope the net ranking doesn't decide a lot of this tournament because I don't really like the net ranking. When I look at who's ranked where, throws a lot of question marks in there. I mean, Colgate's a great team, but by the net ranking, they're a top 15 team in the country. They haven't played anybody. How can you – I don't understand how they're ranked in the top 15. Like, that is superstar.
Loyola Chicago's top 10.
Yeah, Loyola Chicago's the top 10. Exactly. Like, who are these teams playing that this gets them this huge boost in the net ranking? How are these net rankings decided? I think you got to look at the whole resume. And I think the mid-majors are going to be left out this year because unless you played somebody in the non-conference like San Diego State did, you need to be, by far, without a doubt, the best team in your conference to get an at-large bid. And there's not many teams that have said they're the best team in their conference besides like Winthrop, and they're not going to be in there. And then VCU out of the A-10, I think they've dominated. But besides that, the A-10's a mess. The Mountain West is a mess. So nobody's really standing atop out of these mid-majors, and it's going to hurt them in the long run.
Sister Jean's doing something sketchy. I can tell you that.
She's up to something.
She definitely needs to get back in the tournament. We need one more run for Loyola Chicago. But one team that will definitely be in the tournament is Illinois, and that brings us to our player of the week. Each week we like to highlight a guy that will most likely be playing at the next level, give them some insight of how they're doing, what makes them so stellar. And this week we're going with Illinois junior, Ayo Dosunmu. He is a combo guard, 6'5", 200 pounds. He's got the size. And since our last podcast, he went off against Nebraska. 31 points, his second highest point total on the year. And really, this man can do it all, Papi. I know at the beginning of the season you were saying that he could have left last year to the NBA draft, and he decided to come back, and he's definitely improved his stock.
Yeah, I thought Ayo Dosunmu was a surefire thing for being in the NCAA tournament last year. He's really athletic, like you mentioned, kind of lengthy player at 6'5", about 180. Can do it all as a guard, can shoot a little bit. He's had a triple-double this year. Very valuable player to this Illinois team, which is really talented, like we were talking about earlier with some of their other guys that will also be playing in the NBA. But, right now, Dosunmu isn't projected that high in NBA draft picks, and I think he'd be and mock drafts, and I think he'd be a real steal for a team later on.
Lucas, do you want to see your Warriors grab some Dosunmu in the upcoming draft?
I would love a little bit of versatility. I mean, you can never have too many athletic guards in the league, and so that can definitely help out. I was thinking back to 6'5", lanky type of player. It proves a point that when you stay another year, your development does skyrocket. I mean, Illinois is talented as it is, but Dosunmu has made a significant jump that now has him in the top 5. And if he continues to stretch and then continues that into the NCAA tournament, he's going to work out well. He's a freak of nature. I think his draft stock is going to increase heavily. I mean, is he like Tyrese Halliburton, but no handle? He's lanky and he's 6'5". I mean, what kind of modern style? Can he shoot from the 3 well?
Yeah, that's the one thing he improved by staying that extra year. He was shooting 29% from 3 as a sophomore. This year he's shooting 42%. So a huge jump there. Hopefully that will make
all of that.
Yeah, hopefully that will make him rise up the draft boards, because right now he is a mid to late first rounder, which I thought was shocking. And I think maybe a reason because of that is his size matched with his maybe lack of ball handling. He doesn't really bring up the ball for Illinois. They have Trent Frazier for that. And Dosunmu, he puts up numbers. Trust me, no one can guard him. He scored in double figures every single game this year. But in the NBA, where does he really fit? Is he a shooting guard? Is he that good of a shooter? I don't think he's good enough as a ball handler as a point. Papi, where do you see him fitting in the NBA?
Conversely, I think he is good enough to bring the ball up. He does have 3 turnovers a game right now, which he's averaging, but I think maybe part of that is because he has the ball in crunch time a lot. And he's kind of asked to create offense for them. They have Trent Frazier, but he's not really like an assist guy, sitting there with only 2.6 assists per game. Andre Curbelo off the bench is a good backup point guard, but really Dosunmu, when it comes down to it in March, I think he's going to be doing a lot of ball handling for this team, and that's a good thing, especially late in games. I just saw a stat, Jared Burnson, he's a ESPN stats and info guy, Ayo Dosunmu in the last minute or overtime of games this year, shooting 12 of 18 from the field. So certainly has that clutch gene that you'd like to see, especially at the next level.
Yeah, I want to see him get more shots. I think he is by far the best player on this Illinois team. They need to feed him more and more. And honestly, down the stretch, he's hit some crazy pull-up threes. I've seen some crazy shots late in game. But speaking of player of the year watch, Ayo Dosunmu has done it all season long. This isn't just a one-week thing. that he's popping up on our radar. He's averaging 21 points a game, 5 assists, 6 rebounds. Luka Garza seems like he's running away with the award, but should we be keeping our eye on Dosunmu, Lucas?
I think it's a little too late. I mean, we always knew Illinois was there, and I think Garza had more consistent play, and his numbers have dropped a little bit, but he's still averaging a mean 23 and 7. I mean, and Iowa is hovering around that top 10, top 15 ranking the whole year. Illinois has such fluctuation throughout the season that it's really just been, I owe Dosunmu's. I'm trying. I did my best. I mean, what else do you want from me? But his consistent play has been great for the team, but their team success hasn't, versus Iowa has maybe dipped below top 15 once this year and then has skyrocketed back up. I think it's Luka Garza's. It's been that way since before the season even started, to be honest, and there's nothing anybody really can do at this point, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think Luka Garza will ultimately win it, but I think a lot of votes are going to go to Dosunmu. I think he's made a case here, especially down the stretch with that triple-double, Papi.
Yeah, what if it's possible that we see, Luka Garza win Wooden Player of the Year, and then the best player in the conference goes to A.O. Dosunmu? That could be something we see, just given the fact that, he's probably been a little bit more valuable to his team, and his team's going to finish ahead of Garza in the Big Ten most likely. Especially, I believe he has the head-to-head win over Garza too. So I could see something where the Big Ten gives the best player in the conference to Dosunmu while Garza takes National Player of the Year. Certainly warranted. No knock against Garza. I mean, he's averaging 25 a game with crazy efficiency numbers, double-double machine, scores 20 a night basically. So, I mean, he deserves it. There's no question. But I just think Dosunmu maybe a little bit more valuable to his team in terms of creating shots, rebounding. As a whole, he's just a little more valuable.
Yeah, Luka Garza just got off to an insane start. It's going to be hard for anyone to catch him. But if anyone can, Dosunmu is the guy. Garza leading the league in points still, the NCAA, and doing it while shooting nearly 60% from the field. So definitely warranted for either of these guys to win the award. Can't wait to see who it actually goes to. And I also can't wait for this weekend's slate of games. Let's talk about a few of them here, a few of the ranked matchups. We will talk about them, but these are not official gambling plays. For official plays, head over to our Twitter, @Cuse. College basketball gambling, we're 32-31. So hovering right around 500. Hopefully we can get a good week this week, bolster that record. But let's talk about some of the games before the lines are out. First, we'll go to Saturday in the Big 12 at 2 o'clock. Number 15, Texas Tech, going on the road to take on Kansas, who just jumped into the top 25 this week. Lucas, I know you love this Jayhawk team. They've been slipping lately, but maybe they're back on track here.
Oh, God. I hate Kansas. I don't like them. They screw me over every time. I'm going to go the Red Raiders here just because Mac McClung.
Yeah, Texas Tech's been in a lot of close games. They've lost a lot of games recently. I think this one is the one that gets them back on track. Papi, you seeing the same thing?
I also like Texas Tech. They're coming off of, a COVID layoff, haven't played their last 3 scheduled games. They need a win after losing to West Virginia, kind of stunted their 3-game winning streak that they had in the Big 12 there. But that being said, if it is a big number, Kansas at home, I always say it, you're playing Kansas and the Zebras in the Big 12 when Kansas is at home. They love to get the home cooking calls there in Fog Allen Fieldhouse. So if it's a big number, maybe if it's like somehow Texas Tech by 4.5, I'd maybe take Kansas.
With the points.
Yeah, with the points.
Yeah. And then also in the Big 12, Saturday is a big day for the Big 12. At 3 o'clock, West Virginia, who's been rolling. They did suffer a tough one to Oklahoma last weekend, but West Virginia will be on the road against number 12, Texas, who's also looking to get back on track. So a couple teams have been slipping as of late. I'll make my pick first on this one, and I'm going to say Texas gets back on track. Andrew White's going to go for 30 in this one. I love this Texas team. I love their guards. They've been slipping lately. This is the statement win that kind of gets them back on track.
I don't particularly have a pick for this game, but I would definitely check out the under. I think these two teams are just exhausted. They play and grind every single night. The guard play needs to step up for Texas for them to even have a chance. And same with West Virginia, and they're just going to battle it out. I think this is a classic slugfest. I would peep that under once it comes out. If it's in the 1 170s, 180s, it won't be 180, but if it's in like the 160 to 170 range, I would definitely maybe lean towards the under.
Yeah, that is a lot of points. Papi.
I think this is going to be a really good game. They played each other earlier in the season. Andrew Jones, of course, hit the crazy buzzer beater 3 1 year after beating cancer. So that was a really good feel-good story for Texas in that game. That being said, everybody knows I love West Virginia. I got the future on them. I think, these two teams are both really good, though. I think they're going to split, so I'll take the Mounties in this one, especially if they're getting points.
Yeah, they probably will be getting points being on the road in that one. And then we're going to skip ahead to Sunday, probably the biggest matchup of the week. Huge rivalry game as well, especially on the football field. But number 3 Michigan will be traveling to Ohio State to take on the Buckeyes. Number 3 versus number 4, top 5 matchup. Going to be a good one. This is at 1 o'clock on Sunday. Papi, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'd argue this is probably the biggest game of the year so far in college basketball, with us getting robbed of Baylor and Gonzaga. These are, probably the 2 highest ranked teams facing off against each other, with Michigan and Ohio State. Michigan came back from COVID, got a big win at Wisconsin. They look pretty good, especially, coming off of a month-long layoff. That's pretty impressive. And now they go to Columbus to take on a surprise Ohio State team. And just because of that surprise, I keep getting burned by Ohio State. I'm going to take Ohio State in this one. I am. I think that Michigan has the better team. I really do. But Ohio State keeps reeling off wins. And at a certain point, I have to start, taking notice and giving them credit.
And they're at home as well. You liking the Buckeyes, Lucas?
Whenever Pop bets on Ohio State, he loses, and whenever he bets against Ohio State, he loses. And so I'm happy you picked him first to bet the game, because now I have supreme confidence that Michigan's going to get the dub here.
Yeah, I also do like Michigan in this one. I haven't been an Ohio State believer all year. E.J. Liddell, he's leading the team in points and rebounds. He may meet his match this week with Hunter Dickinson. He's got the size down there. Maybe take away a little bit from what Liddell likes to do. That being said, I will take Michigan just because I think they've been more consistent from start to finish. But that will be a good one either way. Should come down to the wire. If you're not watching that one on Sunday with no football this week, I don't know what you're doing on Sunday. So definitely tune into that, 1 o'clock Sunday, Michigan, Ohio State. But that about wraps up our college basketball talk. Let's move over to our one last thing before we let you go. And our one last thing has some Syracuse Orange basketball ties, as Tyus Battle, former guard for the Orange, has won the VTB United League Slam Dunk Contest. Now, I know you guys probably aren't familiar with that, but that is the Russian Basketball League dunk contest. Tyus Battle honestly threw down some pretty impressive dunks, Papi.
He did have that nice, alley-oop between the legs dunk. That was pretty impressive. I didn't think Tyus could really get up like that when he was at Cuse. He probably showed it off a little more in warm-ups, but when it came game time, he wasn't really throwing down like that. But good for him. He's playing over in Russia, making a career out of basketball. It really doesn't get much better than that, other than the fact that he's in Russia. And I know he's playing – he always is posting on Instagram. I still follow him. He's posting the temperature there. I think he's playing somewhere in, like, the middle of Siberia, to be honest with you. It's always, like, negative 30 degrees there. So that's a rough life. But congrats on your little bonus for winning the slam dunk championship in the league.
Yeah, he had the classic, the teammate threw it off the backboard, and then he caught it full extension and threw it down. I was also shocked to see the bunnies that Tyus had. Lucas, are you up on your Russian Basketball League knowledge?
I was actually really impressed with how the arena looked. It looked like there was a real crowd and, the spectacle of it all. I would take – I don't understand how Tyus Battle is not on an NBA team. I know he's probably a tweener in between, like, probably a 1 and a 2 in the NBA, but in college he was like a 2 and a 3. Mm-hmm. But bucket getter. You mentioned that he's averaging 11, 4, and 2. It's not great in Russia, but it's also his first year out of the league, or out of college, playing professional basketball. I also want to know, who was he going up against? Like,
yeah.
Who were his competitors? And, like, he threw down some great dunks. I don't know how many real athletes comes to the Russian league, but the guy who threw it up looked athletic, and he looked athletic. So maybe they got some talent over there. Obviously, keep getting them checks, Ty's battle, early into your career. One of the Warriors players, Juan Toscano Anderson, he was an MVP in Mexico and Costa Rica, and now he's playing for the Warriors. So if Ty's battle can, step up his game and become MVP in some smaller leagues, he'll get that recognition. And I hope he makes the league someday, because I was a way bigger fan of Ty's battle than I was Malachi. And Malachi was, drafted, I believe, in the second round, or maybe he went undrafted. First round, even worse. So, I thought Ty's battle, was a better player than Malachi Richardson. And it's a tough way to get in the league. But I think he could take a lot of people's places, in my opinion.
Yeah, Malachi Richardson solely benefited from that NCAA tournament run that Syracuse had that year. Ty's battle, I think he was with the Iowa G League team. That's the Minnesota Timberwolves farm system team. Then he got shipped off to Russia. Papi, any chance he comes back to the NBA in your mind?
Maybe. Who knows? I think one of the knocks on him kind of was his athleticism, and then we're seeing him, dunking over in Russia.
He's got to be athletic. He won the Russian slam dunk contest.
It looks like he certainly improved that athleticism a bit. No, but who knows? 11 points isn't the most impressive thing, I wouldn't think, in the Russian league. But what do I know? Maybe he's facing the second coming of Gary Payton or something out there in the Russian
Luka.
league.
They'll lock up over there in Russia. They're always training against bears, dude. Like, if you're training against bears, Ty's battle's nothing. But good to see Ty's battle making headlines. That was probably the last thing I would have imagined Ty's battle would be in the headline for, winning a slam dunk contest. Because like you said, at Syracuse, that was kind of the last thing he was known for. More known for his clutch shooting. But great to see he's finally putting it all together in Russia a little bit. But that about does it for the Cali to Cuse Up in the Rafters podcast. Thanks for joining us. New episodes every Friday, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on the challenge-sports.com. Go Cuse, big week coming up. Thanks for tuning in.
Peace.